Welcome to the Challenges of Change, the podcast where we explore the transformative journey towards self-improvement and personal growth. I'm your host, Laura, a mindset coach in the health and fitness industry, here to guide you through the hurdles that life throws at you. In each episode, we'll delve into practical strategies and insightful discussions to help you manage stress, regulate your emotions, upgrade your mindset, and ultimately reclaim your sense of worth. I'm thrilled to have you join me on this journey of change, challenges, and self-discovery. Welcome back to another episode of the Challenges of Change. And once again, I am here with the one and only Jess. How are you today, my dear?
I'm doing fantastic, Laura. I'm really excited to be here and to talk with you today.
Well, I am equally excited to have you here as usual. And when we were discussing what we wanted to talk about, it's always fun because we have so many ideas, but what really landed for both of us was living intentionally. Um, so I'm gonna let you kick it off, like with what that really means to you. Like what is living intentionally? What is not living intentionally?
So, living intentionally is really kind of the cornerstone of my program and what I bring to the table. Living intentionally is actually having awareness of ourselves and taking stock in our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and making sure that as we're moving through life, that those things are in alignment with our actual values, and that we're capitalizing on our strengths, and that we are focused on our goals.
Yeah. To me, what comes to mind when I think about living intentionally is like the difference between living and existing. Um, as you and I know, and as we've talked about on the podcast before, we all are kind of given this like rough draft of a mental map of how the world goes. Like you go to school, you go to college, and then you either go to graduate school or you get a job, and then you get married, then you have kids, and da 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 da, right? So there's this like blueprint that we all are kind of blindly following, which is always why I find it kind of funny when people have midlife crises because it's like that's where the blueprint ends. So
Yeah.
people don't know what to do next. And I think that's to your point, like why living intentionally is so important because it really is the difference of like you leading the living of your life
Yeah.
versus being on a map of what someone else told you, being an autopilot, kind of seeking comfort, which don't get me wrong, like I obviously like comfort like everyone else, but what I've learned is that most of the things in my life worth having were outside my comfort zone. Like marriage, love my husband. It is not always in my comfort zone. Marriage is not always comfortable, right? I love hiking. Hiking is not always comfortable, right? So there's so many things that we do that are uncomfortable, but they're so purposeful. And I will tell you, my favorite thing about living intentionally is how connected I feel to my life.
Yeah. I mean, I think when we start living intentionally, that clarity, right? There's a lot of clarity that comes with living intentionally. Um, we're reducing our stress and we're getting a stronger sense of purpose when we live intentionally. And so I think the best way to present living intentionally, I don't know why this is coming up for me, but I think people will really benefit from understanding that what the opposite looks like,
Yeah.
or that's what the reflection would look
I,
like. And that would be autopilot.
yeah.
So autopilot is just going through the motions. We've heard that saying before. We're just going through the motions. We've lived up to a certain point of our lives where everybody has kind of given us what we should be doing.
Good.
And that our brain, this beautiful tool that we have, has taken all of that, what we should be doing, all of this behavior that we've been doing over and over and over again, and it's got it on repeat. It says you don't even have to think about it now. you can, I'll get all the basic stuff done. I already know how to do it. That's why our brain is such a beautiful tool. But the problem with that is that it becomes very easy, right, to allow our brain to live most of our life on autopilot so that our brains can be free to be thinking about other things cognitively. All the fun that we have going on around us, maybe would be a great way of using it, but also some of the other problems that we have going on. So we're thinking about a lot of things. We're doom scrolling. We're watching the news. We're, taking in all that content and being like, and thinking about these big abstract philosophical things, while autopilot takes care of the day to day.
Yep.
The reason that gets us in trouble, though, is that when we're running on autopilot, we really don't have a lot of control over changing our outcomes. So if you love all the outcomes that you're getting, all autopilot's working really well for you.
Keep your auto on, dude. I'd
Keep
love
your
to be
auto
in
on.
autopilot living my best life. That'd be fantastic. I just haven't met anyone who can.
Well, here's the thing. A lot of the times at this point in our lives, our autopilot is filled up with a bunch of junk that our parents put in there, that society has put in there. So I really wanted to dive into, well, what makes intentional living that much different? And I think what I've distilled it down to, and I'd love to have you bat this around and see what you think, but intentionality brings the why we do things
Hmm.
into the light and has us really look at it and
Yeah,
decide if that's why we want to be doing that. What do you think?
I think that's a really good summary of it, honestly, because I think of it as like an onion, like there's layers to it. So like on the most superficial, which is definitely where most people need to start, because if you're not used to being introspective or reflective, going within your own mind can be scary for some people. So like
Yeah, for sure.
understanding your why, I think is very informative. And quite frankly, awareness is the first step to change anyways. So whether you're living intentionally or not living intentionally, if you aren't sure of your why, you're gonna start gaining that awareness the moment you're like, ooh, that's uncomfortable. Why did I say yes to that?
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I like how you pointed that out. It's almost like once you start asking why, it actually can start dismantling your autopilot.
Oh yeah. It's like
Because
as
have you
soon
ever
as you
done something
shine
you're
a
like,
light
why
on,
did I do that?
yeah. It's like it makes me think of like vampires. It's a horrible analogy, but like they're scared of the light, right? And I feel like
Yeah.
once you start asking why, once you start witnessing parts of yourself and like observing your thoughts, right? Not attaching to them, but observing them, all of a sudden it's like the vampires are like being exposed to the light and they just start to go away. It's to this day, I think it's the craziest thing I've ever experienced was just that one of the like the first coaching things we went through in our course was like just witness your mind. And I had spent so much time trying to ignore my mind.
Yeah, get out of here.
Because I was scared of it. Like
Yeah.
my conditioning was like, do not go within. Within will confuse what we know. Let's stick on the program and keep going. And just the witnessing, I was like, that makes no sense to me. No, that doesn't align either. And I was able to release so much pressure. Like I wish I could formulate this into words like what that feeling was, but it's like I was carrying around thousands of pounds constantly like over analyzing like should I do this? Should I do that? What's this going to be? How are they going to It's like I was so uncomfortable being me because I was trying to like be how I thought I was supposed to be for everyone else.
Hmm.
That was my autopilot. So the moment I just started to see, just let the light shine on it and like ask myself why, I was like, that doesn't really make sense to me, or like that doesn't align with who I want to be. And this is actually a piece of the living intentionally that I think is really important. So I was a people pleaser. So when I was
We're
growing
glad
up,
we're going here.
yeah, when I was growing up and I was in high school, like if my friends were bullying people to fit in, I would bully people. And I don't like that. But and I'm like, I give myself grace. I was a kid, etc. But like, I've forgiven myself for that. And I hate that I did that. But I understand why. I did that. Now that I've actually allowed my mind to look and consider, like, why was I doing it? Because I was afraid. I was afraid if I didn't make fun of them, like my friends were, that I would be ostracized. But now, grow me up. As much as we grow up from teenage girls, cattiness is very prominent, no matter what your age is.
Mhm.
And quite frankly, if I'm around people who want to be judgmental of other people, that's fine. You do you. I have no interest in judging them either, but I don't feel the same weight of, oh, I have to judge too, or I'm going to be on the outside because asking why, looking within, it helped me understand who I want to be and
Yeah.
how I want to live. And for me, that means I'd rather take certain actions and be uncomfortable, like not be judgmental, even though everyone
Yeah.
else is judging and feel left out, but be able to walk away like I am proud of who I am and having integrity about who I am. And that's why I really think it's important to live intentionally because when you're not living intentionally, you're not living by your moral standards. You're not living by your values. You are living by the code that was given to you.
That's
And
right.
my code was go along with whatever is, stay popular, be in like the cool kids at whatever cost.
Yeah.
There was no morality. There was no like, if someone's being bullied, don't join in. It was do what you need to do to be cool. And like, okay, that's what I was given, but I'd rather be weird and uncool and pick someone up than pretend to be cool because I'm afraid and beat someone down. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I love it. I love it. I love it. I have another example coming up, and I think these are really good for the people that are listening too, because when you can relate to these stories, it really does help kind of expand your understanding of the concept. So in my mind, what was coming up is that moment where my clients and I will say yes when we mean no.
Oof,
That
yeah.
was a real autopilot kind of snap decision or knee jerk behavior that we would experience where it's like, oh, I have all this stuff to do. Da, 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 da. Hey, can you take this off my hand? And your immediate thing is yes. Yes, I would love to help you. Yes, I want to be there for you. That and so that's the autopilot, that knee jerk reaction. Yes, of course I can help you with that. But what you're not taking into consideration is everything that you have on your plate and whether or not that's going to spread you too thin.
Mhm.
And so living intentionally would be more along the lines of saying, oh, I can tell that this person needs a lot of help, but let me think about everything I have on my plate. I owe, right? So I'm committed to all of these things on my plate and I want to show up really well in all of those arenas. So if I put this next thing on my plate, am I going to still be able to show up well in this area? Or am I spreading myself too thin? Am I saying I'm going to take all of this burden onto myself? That may or may not alleviate the other person, but it puts all that burden on you, which means you're spread thin, you're stressed out, you're taking on something that you possibly don't even want to be doing.
Yeah, and it seems like an invisible cost. Like, oh, I'll just take the hit, but it's not, especially if you have relationships with anyone in your life. Like when you are overdrawn in your own energetic account or your stress count, whatever, we're never the best versions of ourselves when we're out of capacity, burnt out, overstressed. So maybe we're saying yes in that moment to ease the comfort or ease the discomfort because we do want to help. But that yes is also saying, I choose comfort in this moment, not aware that the people who are going to pay the price is my family and my friends and the people I love because I'm putting too much on my plate.
Yeah.
That's going to affect how I show up in the relationships that matter the most to me. So in a weird way, like I feel like I think this is such a great example because God, I am so guilty of this. And I've had to learn the hard way. And I want to like touch on discomfort for a moment because I feel like a big reason why we say yes in those moments is autopilot, partially. We want to help partially, but because it's uncomfortable to say no. It just
Yeah, that's where
is,
I wanted to go. The
right?
why. Let's use the little experiment that we're doing and saying, well, I think it's why. So why are we, so ask yourself, why are we doing that? Why is that autopilot in there? Laura, I
Boom.
see your hands up.
I am ready for this one. Why are we so resistant to discomfort? My answer is because we misunderstand it.
I love that.
Because if, all right, our code we were all given says these emotions are okay. These emotions are not, right? Like, no, you were never yelled at for smiling. Hell, how many women have been like, come on, you're so pretty. You should smile.
Hmm.
Can't stand that. But I'm not going to go down that path. I really think that we misunderstand discomfort. And if you ask me, it has one like very obvious primal physiological purpose, but there's another purpose to it. So the reason for discomfort from a physiological standpoint and how our brain works, what we find comfortable means there's a degree of predictability in our brain because we don't find everything comfortable. But you can do something now that a month ago or a year ago you used to think was uncomfortable, but because you've done it and your brain's gotten that, oh, this is the normal response, it can predict survival. So it shifts from uncomfortable into comfortable. So what we
Yeah.
don't understand a lot of times is like when we're experiencing discomfort, even emotional discomfort, a big reason why we're experiencing it is because our brain doesn't have enough evidence to perceive the outcome or what will come next as predictable. So
Yeah.
really discomfort is a cue to experiment so that we can get that evidence and help our brain shift into a more expansive comfort state. So that's the physiological reason of
All
discomfort.
right. So real quick before you get to the next one. So in this scenario, discomfort is a signal and it's saying things are different, things are new. This is
Yeah,
a for curiosity and expansion.
correct. Which actually couples perfectly with the second reason and purpose for discomfort. Okay, our brain's telling us we don't have evidence to predict a safe outcome, right? That's
Yeah.
why we experience uncomfortable things, uncomfortable emotions, uncomfortable experiences, whatever. Well, why does our brain, our very efficient brain, decide that's the moment that we're uncomfortable? So that we can focus all of our conscious, energetic attention on how to be the most successful to ease that discomfort and support a survival outcome. So if we go back to like the actual survival instinct, all right, you're hunting back in caveman days, you hear a rustling in the bush, that's going to heighten all of your discomfort. You're going to get into that giant fear response. And it's like, am I food or am I about to get food? I don't know yet. And then you see a rabbit jump out and you're like, oh, that discomfort goes away. And you go into, I want to go get food mode, right? But if you see
Yeah.
a lion, you are heightened in a very intentional position at that point to give you the best odds of survival, right?
Yeah.
So fortunately, we are not cavemen anymore, and we don't have to hunt rabbits to eat or be hunted by lions. But it's the same exact experience in our day-to-day world. You know, confronting someone about hurting your feelings, right? That's
Yeah.
something a lot of people struggle with because it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Doesn't it make more sense that our brain is telling us, ooh, this is going to be uncomfortable. So let's give you access to as much information as you can so you can be as intentional as you can be to
Yeah.
give you the best chance of success.
Yeah. So discomfort in this scenario is a signal towards you need to focus.
To be intentional. Like literally, we're talking about
Be
living
intentional.
intentionally.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, your body just got your attention.
Hmm. It's time to be here right now. Snap, snap, snap.
Right. I'm focused. I'm here. What is it needs me to focus on? Oh, the discomfort of uh, confronting someone with my emotions. Okay, so what values and morals do I want to hold true when I have this conversation? Right? Like that's the
Yeah.
intentionality of it. But there's too many things that go on in our day-to-day life for us to be conscious of every little thing. So our body has a really beautiful built-in alarm system. When it needs us to take care of something, it makes us feel uncomfortable.
All right, I love that. So now we know that discomfort isn't just something to run away from or be avoided, but it's a signal. It's a signal to tell us that things are changing. This is new for us, and we need to focus.
Yeah, that's the why. So then you
Awesome.
don't run from discomfort when you recognize, oh, this is happening for me. This is good. How can I train my brain to steer it via my morals and my values so I can have the best outcome possible?
Yeah, so now we're focused. So once we're focused, one, we have to check in with ourselves. And I think it's important to say present moment in this thing. We need to focus on the present moment. So discomfort and pain can sometimes be in that same thing, but remember that when we're feeling discomfort and pain and we've told ourselves that discomfort is something that we should run away from, more than likely what that's going to do in our bodies is turn on our sympathetic nervous system. So
Yep.
that would not be the time to logically think out your process, but it would be time to like kind of calm down and get yourself to a good place. But then once you're in that present moment with
Mhm.
your discomfort, that would be when you would access your strengths, your values, and
Mm,
your goals
yeah.
to put a level of intentionality on how you're going to move forward from there. I think what you said too is who do I want to be
Yeah.
in
And
that moment?
honestly, I've utilized this many times in the exact example I'm giving of like having to confront people about hurting my feelings. And I noticed like myself at the stop sign, like the discomfort. It's there, stop, right? And I
Yeah,
had to choose to do what I would traditionally do as the old Laura and avoid, or choose to confront. Fortunately, my brain has a lot of evidence about what happens when I avoid. And what happens is disconnection.
yeah,
And I was in town for a very specific reason. I wanted connection. So although avoidance in that moment would have been the more comfortable option of the two, it would have given me an outcome that I didn't want. So
right.
I looked at the outcome I wanted and was like, okay, the only way I can do that is to have the conversation. So how do I want to show up and address this in a loving way?
What you just highlighted there is really, really actually good. And I want our listeners to understand what you just did. That's the difference between having an intention and a goal. The
Hmm,
intention is why I'm doing it. The goal is the outcome I want.
right. I think that's good. I agree. Good job like pulling the distinction to between the two because for me it was very organic to flow into both. But
Yeah.
I will tell you, ever since I've started to recognize when I'm at my discomfort stop sign and
Mhm.
like see the path of what was comfortable and see the outcome or the goal that I want, it's
Mhm.
given me much more purpose, aka why
Mhm.
I want to do this, and really given me a lot of courage to address a lot of things that I am uncomfortable with because the goal is bigger than the discomfort to me,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, so I came up with this fun little analogy for autopilot, like autopilot versus living intentionally. Would you like to hear it?
Avi.
Okay, okay, good. Well, for me, it was cooking in the kitchen because I do that a lot. I'm big into that is what I do for my family. I am a health nut when it comes to cooking and eating. I absolutely adore food and eating and cooking. It is how I show love. It is how I love my family. It's how I love my friends. So the cooking analogy was really easy for me. So for autopilot, autopilot is just knowing that I've got to eat. And if I go into the refrigerator, there'll be something there I can either microwave or I can even possibly just chop up a bunch of ingredients and throw them in a pot and cook them. There's no like real why behind it. It's just heating food up for sustenance and eating it. That's your autopilot, but it doesn't answer any good questions like, why doesn't this taste any good? This is boiled vegetables or something like that, or why am I getting fat from eating all this food? Right? Living intentionally takes eating and cooking to a whole new level and
Hmm.
gives it so many more, it makes it so much more robust and gives it so many more layers. cooking in the kitchen intentionally is recognizing that why we do the things we do. Like, for example, I didn't know when I was a brand new budding cook that the reason um, we salt the water is that when you cook pasta, is that it brings the boiling temperature up. Um, when it came to sauces, here's another one that's kind of high level, unless you've been doing it a while and you've had plenty of mistakes or you had a really good teacher. The whole like using flour to thicken a sauce or using corn flour to thicken a
Mm.
sauce. You can't just throw corn flour into a hot medium and expect it to come out nice and smooth. That's the one that you have to put into a cold medium first and then pour it in as like a slurry. Whereas flour, you heat up and cook in your pan as a roux and bring it to life that way. And you wouldn't know that unless you're being very intentional about your cooking. You would just think, oh, here's the ingredients. I throw them in a pot and they all come together to make this dish.
Yeah, 100%.
So that was my fun little analogy that I made. What did you think?
I like it because naturally my brain goes to like how that applies in day-to-day life of like understanding when and where to exercise different aspects of our values, right? So you actually heard me when I had laryngitis.
Yeah.
So I'll use this as a correlative example. When my husband and I were first getting together, he used to ask me to be softer, like to speak
Yeah.
softer to him. And so I thought he meant like whisper, like talk like this. And like when we're in a disagreement, naturally that's when he wanted me to like be softer. And I didn't understand what he meant because I thought he meant whisper. So like that's my analogy of like whether it's corn flour or flour and the heat or the not, like you just pour it in, you don't know what you're doing with the cookie. Like that was what whisper.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I've learned since then that this is how I normally talk, as you know. This is just me, but I've recognized this is me projecting my voice. So, like, I'm naturally always projecting my voice. What he meant when he originally asked me to be softer, I had to train that voice a little bit when I had laryngitis because it was the only way my voice would come through. So, rather than talking like this, I had to come back down here a little bit and speak a little bit softer or what it feels like. Like I feel like I'm in a dim whisper, right now.
Mhm.
But this feels really inauthentic to me. I feel like
Yeah.
I'm coddling. I feel like I'm almost disrespecting in certain avenues, and I'm not.
Yeah. Almost like speaking in like you're speaking to a child or someone who is not an adult
Right,
or of mental capacity, maybe.
correct. But that's what he was asking for. And so I was trying to understand it. Whispering was putting flour or corn flour, no matter the heat, it doesn't matter. But understanding the environment to exercise this voice, to support and nurture the conversation and love that we want to have through disagreements is something that I've definitely been more intentional about. But if
Yeah.
we're not fighting, I'm just going to be talking like this because this is my normal voice. So, like, understanding when to exercise different aspects of yourself or when to be more empathetic, when to say yes, when to say no. That's exactly what came up when you gave me the
Yeah.
cooking.
Well, right.
Um,
So it's like, so the intentionality for the cooking one would be being more intentional is, well, I'm going to get high quality ingredients.
yeah,
I'm going to follow a recipe, that sort of thing.
yeah,
I'm going to be really intentional about how I put all the ingredients together and what ingredients I'm putting together for the outcomes that I want.
yes,
So if I don't want to be getting fat, well, I'm going to take a look at those ingredients that I'm putting in the food that I'm
right.
cooking. Um,
I don't want to
like,
be miserable, then I'm going to be aware of the ingredients or the thoughts that are rotating around my brain, causing me to be miserable.
yeah, I'm not just taking things out of the fridge and throwing them in the pot and hoping it's going to make a meal and that my family's going to be satisfied. I actually sit down, I plan a menu, I go out and do the grocery shopping, I bring it all back, I have to prepare all the food, and then and each meal comes out right with a fat. Well, I'm thinking about macros, right?
Yeah.
So I've got fat, I've got a protein, I've got some carbohydrates in there working with us. So it's all very intentional. And then so the outcome becomes easier, right? That reduces the stress of getting to my outcome because I've made intentional thoughts to get to that outcome. My actions are all in alignment towards that outcome. The opposite of that is autopilot. So when we're walking around and we're not asking why we're doing things, we have no idea if they're getting us to our outcome.
No, we're just
And
guessing.
times, well, yeah, either that or we haven't even asked why we're doing that. The thing is that it may have nothing to do with our outcome, and it could possibly be taking us further away from our
100%.
outcome because we haven't even thought about why we're doing it.
I couldn't agree more. And I'm curious because when you gave me the cooking analogy, something came up as like
Yeah.
a resistance point. I get the analogy, I agree with it,
Mhm.
but I'm curious, what role do you think time plays in living intentionally?
Ooh, what a great question. What role does time play in living intentionally? Well, in living intentionally, I think you have a healthy relationship with time.
Mm,
Whereas, not that there's like unlimited time, but you're working with time and not against it.
I I will definitely say it is where I self-sabotage the most is the time narrative because after going to France, I am way more connected to food and like the purpose of food and wanting the purity of it because the food in France is just unfreaking believable. And I always used to just meal prep to get it done. And now I actually came back with like a restored respect for food and what it does. And I like want to cook things more myself, want to make my own sauces. Like I keep expanding naturally, but what always stopped me was the time. And as you were talking about the cooking analogy, I was like, it's funny because I just shifted from a space of like, let me at least have it prepped so I'm taking care of myself to like, if it takes me 2 hours, if it takes me 6 hours, like I want to appreciate the time and the investment in cooking. And to your point, when you're living intentionally, you're more grounded and connected to your life in general, but especially to how you're spending your time,
Yeah.
where you're giving it or where you have like a time subscription. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's
Yeah.
like scrolling on socials
Yeah.
is like a time subscription. Like you're wasting time and it's comfortable, but like what do you know, an hour's gone by and you're like, oh my God, I could have read for an hour. I guess I can't read now. So it's
Yeah.
like you're more connected to the intentionality and the purpose of your time. So it makes it a lot easier to be less stressed because you're not hooked in urgency culture.
Yeah, and it's so funny, but like it so resonated. You talking about that so resonated with my, funny enough, my own learning to cook and meal prep kind of journey. I was the person that came into this whole thing before the coaching and everything like that with zero time. I had no time. In fact, I was so overwhelmed with how the hell do people do life? How do they find time to do all of these things? I couldn't understand it. I never had any. Now, if I were to take my meal prepping plan that I do every single week and I were to explain that to my past self, she would not be in believement. She would
Hmm.
never be able to believe me because she could not even comprehend having that much time. But here's the thing, all I've done is save myself time.
Yeah.
That's what she didn't get back then. If you could create the space for me to have two versions of myself right now, that version of me back then couldn't believe that doing all of these things could possibly save me time. All I saw was that that's going to take a lot of time.
Hmm.
And in
Hmm.
reality, when I do all of my food prep, on Mondays I go. I already have my list. I run out. My grocery store opens at 9 a.m. I am done by 10:30, getting all my food put away. And then it's about prepping. And so I prep everything because I'm already intentional about the meals I'm going to plan that week. I've already done my menu. So
Hmm.
because I already know what that is, I already know how many onions I need cut up, celery, carrots, whatever vegetables I need prepped and planned. I already know what they are. I actually do them on a whiteboard. I have a little handheld whiteboard. and I prep everything. And then if something's going to go in a crock pot, I can already put all that in there, right? Food dumping type things, or just even having everything set up. All of that happens in a matter of maybe an hour or two
Mm-hmm.
throughout the entire week. The way it used to look is that I would come home, have nothing planned, maybe not even anything out of the freezer, right? And then I would have to scurry around. I'd be super, super stressed out. I'd be throwing things together. Those things would not be nutritious. Maybe they might have
Oh
some,
my God. Yeah.
right? But there was no level of intentionality there. It was kind of like, I know I have to eat. I know I have to feed my family. I'm going to throw something together. This is going to have to be good enough. The
Dude,
intention, and I never had enough time, and we were always going to bed late.
I have so many like bells ringing in my head right now, which doesn't make me sound crazy at all. But I was going to ask you as we like close things up, I'm going to ask you, but I'm going to answer it first.
Okay.
Uh, like, what's the one thing that you want our listeners to take away from this to motivate them to live intentionally? So that's my question to you. My answer is like to see what we both just outlined is when you are living intentionally, you actually are saving yourself time because we aren't when we're saying yes without thinking things through, we're having a cost on the back end to our stress, to our burnout, and that's hurting the people that we love. When we're not investing in our time to cook or to nourish our family, we're spending the stress and extra time on the back end trying to make that meal and get everything done. And none of it is enjoyable. So literally living intentionally is seeing the bigger picture, choosing how to invest your energy with intention based on your values and your goals and your morals. And it allows you to enjoy life so much more because you lighten the load of what you think you're supposed to be doing and shift into this is who I want to be. This is how I want to experience my life. This is how I want to invest my time.
Beautifully said. I love that so much. And I do. I want that so much for anybody who's listening. What I would love to add on to there as we sign off is I'm going to bring in my scientific mindset and I'm going to say, I want you to walk away from this being curious
Mm,
without judgment. Just be
mm.
curious. I want you to go through your life and doing the things that you do so beautifully, recognizing that you're a beautiful and complete human being. And I just want you to get curious about the things that you just do without thinking and whether or not they are in alignment with who it is you're trying to be.
Beautiful. I can't agree more. There, you did it again, Jess. You did it again. Way to go. Proud of you. There you go. Well, listeners, I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast as much as we did because we really only do get one life. And, I say this all the time with my clients. We tend to be the most connected to our life when we lost someone. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to have to experience grief to feel connected to my life. I want to value the people I've lost by living intentionally and being connected to my life with purpose. And I'm just really grateful that I've learned that so young. And I hope that you guys can have the courage to start considering why. But Jess, your light is bright as always. I so value you. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Any last words?
The only thing coming to mind is life is a gift. Life
Like
is a gift. So get intentional and really enjoy it.
you heard it here. Until next time, guys. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of The Challenges of Change. If you're ready to stop stressing and reclaim your sense of worth, be sure to visit my website at www.changebychallenge.com. There, you'll find loads of resources, blog posts, and information on how to work with me, Laura, as your personal mindset coach. Remember, if it doesn't challenge you, it won't change you. Don't let burnout or any other obstacle hold you back from living your best life. Take the first steps towards positive transformation today. Thank you again for listening. Stay confident, stay inspired, and embrace the challenges of change. Until next time.